So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming along. If you'd like to make sure you've got a glass of wine and sat next to a bowl of nibbles, help yourself. If you're going to leave, then just pull the door and you will make a noise. I'd like to thank Jonathan for coming tonight. He's come all the way from Crosskeys in South Wales. I believe he's spoken to the English department tonight. I really appreciate you doing this for us. I met Jonathan in the summer or in the spring, I think it was, when Matthew Jarvis did a talk, a lecture basically on and Jonathan came along to that. So I grabbed him and said, come back and we'll do a sort of proper poetry evening. If you want to listen again to that lecture, by the way, we did record it and it's on the Aberystwyth Arts Centre's YouTube page, so if you want to get all academic and then go afterwards, go and listen to that. And we will be. I am recording it tonight. So if everyone wants to say hello to yourselves, hello, and then I'll post it up onto YouTube. I'll take some photographs as well, and if everyone would like to share it, and you can listen again at your leisure. In that lecture is all the introduction you need for Jonathan, but one thing I think was missed out was the awards that Jonathan's received. He's won the Terry Hetherington Award in 2010, the Basil Bunting Award in 2012. He was shortlisted for the Fenton Elderberg First Collection Prize in 2014. First place prize at the Ledbury Poetry Festival International Competition in 2014. The winner of a small thing called the Costa Poetry Award in 2014. And I think you're off to Glasgow tomorrow to talk to, and you're getting invites all over the country. So it's brilliant stuff. So sit back, as I say, make sure you've got a glass of wine, and bathe in the pure joy that is My Family and Other Superheroes. Available in all good bookshops. So please give a warm welcome to Jonathan Edwards.
Thanks so much for coming, I really appreciate it. I'm going to start with a poem from which is about Newport, which is set in Newport. If any of you have ever been to Newport, congratulations on making it back. This is about something that happened in Newport in 1905. Harry Houdini, the famous escapologist, came to Newport for a performance, and they put him in a straitjacket and they threw him off Newport Bridge into the water to see if he'd come up again, and thankfully he did. Nowadays, of course, if we put someone in a straitjacket and throw them off Newport Bridge into the water, it's just a damn good Saturday night out. But for Harry Houdini, this was a performance. And when this happened in 1905, my grandfather was 15 years old. He was an apprentice in the Valley's Butchers. And the poem imagines that my grandfather was there on a bank holiday Monday in 1905 to get a look at Harry Houdini. So it's called Harry Houdini on Newport Bridge. He stands 100 feet above a river that's popular with suicides and lovers. He stands there in the limelight and the weather, in padlocks, chains, a straitjacket, and his immaculate moustache. The whole town, gathered, watching, breathes in. He stands 100 feet above the river and leaps. Meanwhile, in the crowd, my grandfather is busy being 15. He's presently engaged in tying the shoelaces of a policeman to those of a vicar, lifting handkerchiefs from pockets to swap them with each other. Harry Houdini has been what? A minute underwater, and in the crowd, hands are being raised to mouths. A day off for my grandfather from the family village butchers. He looks up at the chains on the watches of his father, his grandfather. A minute and a half, a woman on the bank points towards a darkness in the river, slowly turning to a bobbing head, moustache, a waving hand, a cheer. The woman starts to cry. Her husband reaches for his handkerchief. A policeman pulls a vicar from his feet. Do you ever go to a poetry reading and a slightly intense looking young man stands in front of you and says those terrifying, terrifying words, "Now I'm going to read a poem about my mother." You might find yourself running towards the door. Thankfully Simon just locked that door so you can't escape. This is a poem about my mother. It's a poem about my mother's voice. It's a celebration of my mother's voice. My mother's voice when she read stories to me when I was a kid. When she read Roald Dahl and Mark Twain and these incredible writers, which is an incredibly important tone of voice, I think. This poem also has a very stupid knees up Mother Brown sort of form, which you'll notice happening. The voice in which my mother read to me isn't her good morning, good afternoon, good night voice, her karaoke as she dusts, make furniture polite voice, her saved for neighbours' babies and cooing our dog's name voice. It isn't her best china, not too forward, not too shy voice, or her dinner's ready, your room looks like a sty voice, or her whisper in my ear as she adjusts my tie voice. It's not her roll in, Friday night, Lucy in the sky voice, her Sunday morning, smartest frock, twinkle in the eye voice, that passing gossip of the vicar with the communion wine voice. It's not her gatto, no, I scream, no, I can't make the choice voice. It's not her decades late, fourth change, is this skirt smart enough voice. It's not her caught me with a girl from number 21 voice. That voice which she reserved for 12-foot grannies, deep south hobos, that sleepy, secret staircase, selfish giants, lilliput voice, that tripping over, boy, why is your house so full of books voice. The most important thing to remember about writing a poem about your mother is immediately after doing it, you have to write a poem about your father. This is a poem about my father. My father's passion is cars, is classic cars and renovating classic cars. So most of my memories of my father from when I was a young man, from when I was a kid, are of him lying underneath a car on his back, poking his spanner up at the underside of this thing with just his 2 feet sticking out from under the front of the car as I played around him. So this is a poem in celebration of all that. This is called How to Renovate a Morris Minor. That's him, in the camouflage green overalls, hiding under the car all day from my mother. What is he but a pair of feet, my father, muttering prayers to God and the sump gasket, wearing oil drips, enough zips for all his secrets. On his back he pokes a spanner up at a nut, as if unscrewing heaven. Grease fingers make a crime scene of the kitchen. He gives the stars in his bucket to the bonnet, and when he sees his face in it, then it is smiling. His foot on the accelerator makes the world go. His right arm at the auction can't say no, and when the day is over, that's him, that's him. He's snoring on the sofa, practical classics open on his lap. His eyes dart under their lids as he sleeps. Like jaguars, he's racing in his dreams. So this title, My Family and Other Superheroes, one of the strategies in this book is to write about the family, but also to try and broaden that out through writing about famous people. This is my cynical marketing ploy of poetry, to engage people by writing about famous people. The other cynical marketing ploy you can use with poetry is not to write it. This is about Evel Knieval. Evel Knieval, in the 1970s, stunt motorcyclist. And this poem imagines that Evel Knieval is jumping over on his stunt motorbike for once, not double-decker buses and monster trucks, but rather members of my family. So this is called Evel Knieval Jumps Over My Family. A floodlit Wembley. Lisa, the producer, swears into her walkie-talkie. We Edwardses, 4 generations, stand in line between ramps, smile for the cameras. My great-grandparents twiddle their thumbs in wheelchairs as Lisa tells us to relax. Mr. Knieval has faced much bigger challenges. Double-deckers, monster trucks, though the giraffe is urban legend. Evel Knieval enters, eye of the tiger drowned by cheers, his costume tassels, his costume a slipstream, his anxious face an act to pump the crowd, surely. My mother, always a worrier, asks about the ambulance. Evel Knieval salutes, accelerates towards the ramps. I close my eyes, then open them. Is this what heaven feels like? Some motorcycle Liberace overhead, wheels resting on air? Are these flashes from 60,000 cameras the blinding light coma survivors speak of? Before he lands, there's just time to glance along the line. Though no one said a thing, all we Edwardses are holding hands. This poem has a very similar strategy to the last one, although it's based on something that is slightly more in reality. In 1965, this thing happened in Crumlin. Crumlin is the next village up the valley from where I live. And in the 1960s, it had one of the biggest railway viaducts in the world. It's an amazing structure swept right across the valley. And Hollywood at this point was shooting this movie called Arabesque, which starred Gregory Peck and Sophia Loren. And they needed a viaduct to film on. So this massive Hollywood film crew, Gregory Peck, Sophia Loren, descended on this tiny Welsh mining village in 1965. And of course, when that happens, everyone from miles around turns out to try and get a look at the famous people. And one of the people who went to Crumlin that day, chiefly I think to try and get a look at Sophia Loren, was my father, who was about 20 at this point. So the poem uses all of this to get to my father as a young man. Sunday. The crowd beneath the viaduct waves banners made from grocery boxes, bed sheets. Welcome to the valleys, Mr. Peck. Wind turns their chapel dresses into floral parachutes. Their perms don't budge an inch. The emotion of it's too much for one girl's mascara. We love you, Miss Loren. My father parks away from them, around the corner, in his brand new car, a 30s Lanchester, with stop-start brakes, a battery he shares with a neighbour. All sideburns and ideas, a roll-up behind one ear and a flea in the other from my gran for missing Eucharist. He coughs and steps down from the running board as two Rolls Royces pull up opposite. Gregory Peck, 3 years after being Atticus Finch, steps from one, says, "Good morning." From the other, it isn't. It is, wearing her cheekbones. My father's breakfast is nervous in his stomach, but he grabs his Argus, pen, and yes, they'll sign. Her high heels echo away through the whole valley. That's how my father tells it. Let's gloss over how his filming dates aren't quite the same as Google's. The way Sophia Loren formed her essays suspiciously like his. Let's look instead at this photo of the crowd gathered that day he walked towards to share those autographs, his fame. There, front and middle, with her sister, the girl he hasn't met yet. There, my mother. The first time I ever did poetry reading of any length, I've been used to reading for 5 minutes, reading for 10 minutes, begging people, please let me read these poor souls a poem, And when it eventually got to the stage, like someone said, come to this bookshop and read for an hour, I thought, oh my God, how the hell do I do this? Sword swallowing, I was considering, fire eating, these sorts of things, keep people engaged. And when this happened, because I work as a teacher, so when this happened, as I often do at moments of moral and spiritual crisis, I turned to my year 11 and I said, what do I do? What do I do? How do I keep people engaged for an hour? And they were very supportive, always very, very supportive. They said, don't worry, they said, because after 5 minutes, no one will be listening anyway. But time, you see, is something that bothers me. Time, the way that it just keeps going, and you can't sort of step aside for a minute or go backwards or any of these things. And well, if you're going to write poems about time, there are 3 sacred texts about time, aren't there? One is John Keats, Ode to a Nightingale. The second is F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby. And the third is Back to the Future, featuring Michael J. Fox. And I chose the last of those 3 as my inspiration. So this is a poem about watching Back to the Future for the first time when I was a kid, and then repeated viewings. It's called The Death of Doc Emmett Brown in Back to the Future. I sit here in the darkness with my father, slurping Pepsi, passing popcorn round. The Libyans come fast around the corner, pump Doc Brown with automatic fire. My feet are dangling inches from the ground. I sit here in the darkness with my father as Marty hits 88 miles an hour, goes back to 55 to warn Doc Brown. The Libyans come fast around the corner, pump Doc Brown with automatic fire. He gets up, dusts his bulletproof vest down. I sit here in the darkness with my father, who starts to gently snore. Now time goes quicker. The cinema's knocked down, moved out of town. The Libyans come fast around the corner on DVD. My boy asks for Transformers instead, as from the wall his bump looks down. I sit here in the darkness with my father. The Libyans come fast around the corner. I was reading in Chester a couple of weeks ago, and the audience told me that within the city walls in Chester, after 9:30 at night, it is legal to shoot a Welshman with a bow and arrow. As indications that the reading is not going very well. I found that an interesting one. It was the weekend, I think, after the Wales-England rugby match, so it was an interesting time to reflect on the conflict between Wales and England, particularly in sporting terms. And this is a poem about Welsh sport. It's about the Welsh national football team. I should write a rugby poem, but this is about football. And of course, we are in this incredible position. We've actually qualified for major championships. I still can't quite believe that's true, but we've done it. Never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. Absolutely amazing thing. This spends some time with the Welsh national football team in 1991 in a match that they were playing against Germany. Germany had just won the World Cup. This was kind of Klinsmann and Rudi Völler and these sorts of players. And so there was no way that Wales could win this match, but they did. Ian Rush scored and they won 1-0. And this was the first football match I ever went to with my father when I was 12. So the poem uses all of this to get to my father about 20 years ago. It opens at half-time in the Welsh changing room. 0-0. Once the changing room doors closed, the Germans out of sight, the Welsh team can collapse. There's Kevin Ratcliffe, belly up on the treatment table. Sparky hews his body, sulks in the corner, floppy as the curls which he had then. All half they've barely had a kick. Big Nev Southall throws his gloves to the floor like plates in a Greek restaurant. As, in tracksuit and belly, Terry Yorath looks round at a room of panini faces. He doesn't know yet he will never get them to a major finals. He does know what to say. Brian Giggs, still young enough to be in a boy band, stands up, doing an impression of his poster on my wall. The crowd begins to ask for guidance from the great Jehovah, and Ian Rush's famous goal-scoring moustache perks up. He's half an hour away from the goal that cues the song that makes his name 5 syllables. What he doesn't know is I'm in the stand in my father's coat, storing things to tell at school next day. My father pours more tea from his work flask and says, We got them now, but watch and asks again if I'm too cold. What we don't know is we'll speak of this 20 years from now. One of us retired, one a teacher. In a stadium they'll build down by the river. But now it's rushy, sparky, Southall, gigs. 8:45, the crowd begins to roar, wants to be fed until they want no more. The tea tastes just like metal, it's too hot, and something catches right here on the tongue. The changing room door opens and they step out, toe touching, stretching, staring into the future. It's time to be the people we'll become. So there's a number of poems about Wales in the book. This whole second section is about Wales, and I'll read this poem about Wales. It's just a short little poem. It's sort of my version of English language Welsh national anthem. It's got a very simple central idea. It compares various aspects of Welsh history and geography to various bits of the body. So this is called anatomy. These shoulder blades are Snowdon, the Brecon beacons. Walk gently on them. This spine is the A470. These palms are Ebu, Y, Sahawi. This tongue is Henry VIII's active union. These lungs, pneumoconiosis. These rumbling guts, the Gurnos. This neck, Dick Penderian. This manner of speaking is my children, my children's children. These vital organs are Nye Bevan. This liver, Richard Burton. This blood, my father. These eyes have been underground for generations. Now they're adjusting to the light. This gap-toothed smile is the Severn Bridge, seen from the English side. Yeah, I'll read this one. Because I was just talking to Gavin about this poem, about the Chartist mural in Newport, and the Chartist mural in Newport was this incredible realist artwork. Some of you might have seen it, some of you might have been there, and just this celebration and commemoration of what the Chartists did in inventing democracy for the UK. And now it's been destroyed and it's been obliterated. And I think the place where it's going to be, where it was, is there's going to be a TGI Friday. So this is urban reinvention for you, I suppose. But an amazing artwork. So it's a poem really in commemoration of that mural that was there. This tunnel is the way from one place to another, shortcutting from a station. You pass these men, flattened by history to a busker's backdrop, marching for centuries towards a Westgate they will never reach. And, bottom right, these three, forever dying, are bleeding from their mouths, their hearts, red tiles. This tunnel is the way from one time to another. The school trip boy who stares for a morning at the unmoving men. Their fault-line features and their jigsaw jaws make sketches in his head he'll never finish. Kingsmen, firing the slowest bullets in the world, are those whose screams shatter their faces into pieces. This tunnel traps the wind, makes catwalk models of the men chasing Monday morning through it. Bank workers, weekend deserters with long memories in their laptops. Now this tramp, his duvet growing from his chin, wondering how he got here, wakes face to face with a universal manhood suffrage banner. These bits and pieces, men, look at each other. This is a poem about writing poems, which is always a terrible and boring thing to do. But on the upside, this poem has an important claim to fame because it is the first poem in the history of human civilization to be inspired by the TV series MasterChef. I was watching MasterChef a couple of years ago, and also being unable to write poems, and the two things made a marriage in my head, and this thing came out. It's written from the point of view of a maitre d' in a restaurant. So the front of house guy, the guy who sells you expensive wine and takes your jacket and asks you how your day's been, very suave, very together, very sophisticated. Meanwhile, in this particular restaurant, in the kitchen, there's a chef who's a complete nutcase, uncontrollable, madcap, genius sort of figure. And this front of house guy is constantly trying to control him. So in some way, this to me is what writing poems is a bit like. It's got a very long and stupid title, this poem. It's called Restaurant Where I Am the Maitre d' and the Chef is My Unconscious. The day I wrote that title, I took the rest of the day off. I put through an order for spaghetti, aglio e olio. He sends out a soup bowl full of blue emulsion. A regular asks for lamb shank with rosemary. Out comes a beetroot served with a corkscrew. Someone, I suspect of being a restaurant reviewer, orders the baked rum and chocolate pudding. A mermaid rides a horse out of the kitchen. He locks himself in there for days. All I get are incoherent mumblings, often in French. Some nights, after closing time, we sit down together with a glass or two, get on famously, see eye to eye. Next day, he sits in a deck chair all through service, wearing a paper hat and a tie-dyed surplice. That's it, I say. I'm speaking to the owner. That night, he shakes me awake, takes the lid off a serving dish. An actual star he's taken out of the sky and put on a plate. I know it's only a dream, but next evening I'm bright and early at the restaurant, shouting the orders, shaking the customers' hands, picking bits of gold out of my teeth. And I'll read this poem. This is my favourite poem in the book, so I always like to read it because it means that at least one person in the room will enjoy it. It's about a hippo. It's about a hippo in a zoo, and I had this money from Literature Wales a couple of years ago to write poems, which is an amazing thing. You don't have to go to work for a bit of time, and you get up in the morning and just write poems. And it is amazing, but you get to week 3 of this thing, and you get up in the morning and you think, what the hell did I write a poem about today? I used up all my ideas last week, you know. And when this happened, I had a leaflet from a zoo with a picture of a hippo on the front of the zoo, emerging from the water, its jaws wide open. It looked amazing, this thing. I thought, my God, that must be a poem. So I dutifully went to the zoo, and I sat there in front of the hippo tank all day, 8 hours, with my pen poised above the paper, ready to make a note of every aspect of hippo behaviour and immortalise this thing. And in return, the hippo did nothing at all day. It just lay there beneath the line of water in its tank and would not show itself, completely unimpressed by the presence of a poet. So this poem became an attempt to conjure this hippo to rise and to show itself. The hippo is solo, hobo, incognito, 2 boulders curving out of Dettelmurk. In a zoo, his photo advertises, doing a sponsored sitting still all day. Stop being a cliché, hippo, or I won't write a poem about you. Then you'll be sorry. What is your body but the verb to wallow? What is the water but a part of self? Google says you can crush a Ford Sierra between your jaws. They don't say how they test this. Candy floss high boys crowd your glass, betting they could hold their breath underwater longer. They could leap from one boulder to the other. I abandon you for the giraffes, stupid as window cleaners. The lions, sunshine with teeth, but keep coming back. If you were to rise, show your eyes, your mouth, would you have Martin Sheen's mud-crazy face, breaking smoke water in Apocalypse Now? Closing time. One last go. Oh please, hippo, don't be so self-effacing, so tight-fisted. Come on out. Don't you know we love you? Wait. Is that a flash of flesh, a hippo peep show, or are you still snoozing? A little girl says, Dad, that island's moving. And I think I'll just read one more. So this is about a Welshman, and he's trying to get a flight back from New York. He's trying to get a flight back from John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, and he can't for a number of stupid reasons which emerge in the poem. So I'll just finish with this one, and thank you so much for listening. And there will also be a chance for questions. If anyone wants to ask questions once I finish this poem, then please do. I like all sorts of questions. I particularly like questions that I can answer. In John F. Kennedy International Airport, a toothy blonde, whose name tag said Lucille, served me at check-in. I showed my ticket, was surprised when she said, "That's been cancelled." "Sorry, sir." "The flight to Cardiff's off," I said. "It can't be, can it?" "No, sir," she said. "You don't quite understand. Wales has been cancelled. It no longer exists." "What?" I said. "What do you mean Wales doesn't exist?" "Sir, do try and calm down," said Lucille. "The US government has simply decided Wales doesn't exist. You can hardly be surprised. For God's sake, you guys never even made it to the Soccer World Cup finals. But don't worry, sir. Just for the convenience of clients like you, sir, we've recreated the essential Welsh existence in a small museum in Kansas. You'll just love it. Male voice choirs sing Calon Lan, beamed Lucille, as bonneted crones serve cowl and Welsh cake surprise. And there are satellite link-ups with the King of Wales, Tom Jones, and his sister, Catherine Zeta, direct from Wales via LA. Now, could you please stop crying, sir? I glanced round the airport. It was full, to my surprise, of Welshmen mourning their land which didn't exist. Wrapped in Welsh flags, girls 10 times lusher than Lucille asked each other where to they could score a hit of cyanide, as men opened paracetamol, dropped it into duty-free vodka, blubbing for Wales. Dazed, I watched the next passenger approach Lucille, and her say, "I'm sorry, that's been cancelled, sir." This guy's suit was that quality they say no longer exists, a daffodil in his lapel. So I was surprised when he heard Wales had been cancelled. He flashed a surprised smile. When she told him they'd recreated it in Kansas, he danced a jig, laughing, "Wales doesn't exist." That face looked familiar. Who was this betrayer of Wales? As she told him, "We'll switch you to the Hawaii flight, sir," I leaned in to hear, and that was when she said it, old Lucille. Our apologies again that Wales no longer exists. What an honour and surprise to serve you. Please, call me Lucille. Now, I hope it's a pleasant flight, Mr. First Minister, sir.
More.
Thanks so much for listening. Did anyone have any questions they wanted to ask? Yeah.
I will. You alluded a little bit to the fact that poetry sometimes is hard to kind of propagate amongst young readers, perhaps. I was just wondering, as a teacher, do you ever read any of your own poetry to your classes at all?
No. I want to get through the day alive and with as little problem as possible. There was one girl who was asking me about using it for coursework or something. No, I never have. And also, actually, I was talking to Matthew about this and the group that we were with this afternoon, that I never usually even use my own poems in workshops. I sort of think that, if you can use someone else's work, then you can look at it in a way that's kind of objective, and you can sort of learn from it and draw things from it. Whereas if you use your own, I think the way I put it to Matthew is that like either people might be afraid of saying what they think, or they might say what they think, and then and then you got a problem. So I stick to people who I know are good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone want to ask anything else?
Do you see yourself going on being a teacher indefinitely, or?
I do it. Yeah, at the moment I do. Yeah, I mean, I sort of like the the combination of the things, like just having a normal life, an ordinary life, and like the energy of the classroom, and then having writing alongside that. I think it's a really nice balance. And I don't want to be like in an ivory tower somewhere. I want to.
No, it's certainly not an ivory
Absolutely, absolutely. And just, I mean, it's fun. I mean, talking to kids about books all day is kind of enjoyable.
So they do have a way with language.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like just a completely unrestrained imagination, particularly the younger you go.
Yes.
So I think all of that is brilliant, a real gift.
And do you still have time to write with a lot of publicity and stuff?
Yeah, so this has been the biggest struggle, really. Like, I mean, actually, that's one good thing about teaching is the kind of length of the holidays and the blah blah blah, that you can get writing done. But this year, because of the the number of readings and workshops and all that sort of stuff, it's been harder. But well, I suppose that's part of the reason why you write in the first place. You want to get stuff out there to an audience. So it's it's a bit of a mad year this year, but I'll calm down very quickly, I'm sure. So I mean, just at the moment, it's getting to the stage where I can get back and really give some extended time to writing. So that's a really good thing.
I could ask a question that goes off a slight tangent.
Yeah.
Was there any attempt to stop the destruction of the Chartist mural?
Yeah, there were big protests and a whole movement of people, and basically the council were slightly sneaky in how they did it. That I think it was proposed that it would be, there were rumours and that it would be taken down at a subsequent date, and then one day they put a big fence around it, and quite late at night I think it was done, and even at that point there were protesters. But I think they had a really big protest scheduled for the weekend after it was actually done, because they hadn't been told that but yeah, I mean the
incredible thing.
Absolutely. And I mean the Michael Sheen documentary that was done recently about working class revolt in the area, they had some footage on there of the mural with this big hole in it, and this pile of rubble in front of it, and the police restraining the protesters, just an incredible sort of. But I mean, there were all sorts of things talked about in terms of, can we not move it or move part of it in the museum, or because it had been there. It was put up in 1979, so you're talking about a long time that it had been there. And we were just talking at the start that it was kind of instrumental in both our childhoods, that we were in schools that sort of reenacted Chartist marches and went there and visited it, and it was just an incredible thing, and so much more than an artwork, about the identity of the area and the people. Yeah. So just a tragedy, really.
About reading, I don't know if you have any time along everything else that you do, but as a writer, who or what do you like to read?
Yeah, so I mean the poets I really love are actually quite often similar to my sort of stuff. So accessible, funny sort of poets. Simon Armitage is a big influence. A number of American writers, Thomas Lux, James Tate, who died earlier this year. I'm a big fan of. When James Tate died, they put this thing on the Poetry Society website, like a tribute, and I had a quote from James Tate on there, where he talked about his poetic project, and he talked about he's automatically funny. He can't help it. He just writes sits down and writes something and people fall about laughing, you know, and there's a way in which that can be a gift and it can be a curse. But he was interested in working through that to kind of affect someone emotionally, to get to a reader emotionally. Ultimately, he wanted to make him cry. And I think that as a poetic project, that's kind of brilliant. That you wanna be funny and you want to be accessible and you want people to read you, but you want to move people ultimately. You want that sort of connection with someone else. And then fiction, I suppose I like the sort of people that everyone likes, like, you know, big Americans quite often, Don DeLillo and David Foster Wallace, and these sorts of. Actually, quite often for the same reasons, because they're very funny. I mean, White Noise, my God, it's just like the funniest thing. Yeah, I've always liked writers who make me laugh, very definitely, since childhood. Mark Twain's a big favourite. Yeah.
Actually, just kind of following on from that, it seems kind of contemporary politics and kind of 20th century politics seems to kind of inflect the collection in some way. And actually I was going to say whether that was ever an impulse to write, but perhaps it would be better to kind of frame it in terms of whether you find it difficult to make funny political poetry. You know, like how you know, the JFK poem with that kind of last line about the First Minister. It's a lot funnier than perhaps Anatomy, where, you know, it's a much more personal political thing. I mean, do you find it difficult to kind of reconcile those two things?
Yeah, I mean, I think politics is something that I'm very interested in because of where I come from. That we got this history of working class descent to do with Chartism and to do with, so that, you know, you're fed this when you're in school, you know, Chartism and the Rebecca riots and all of this kind of incredible history of just saying no to the man, you know, this kind of thing that we've got. And I mean, the extent to which that can be funny, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I sort of, I think writing comic poems, I mean, as I was saying about James Tate, is sort of, to some extent, can be a gift and can be a curse, and to some extent you can't control it. You sort of write the thing that you write, and then you go somewhere and people will start laughing, or they won't, and at that point you know whether it's been funny. But I think probably, I mean, politics, like anything else, is probably worth coming at from several directions. So like a poem like the Chartist mural, it's much more serious, whereas the First Minister one is more comic. I think sometimes I'd like to be much more serious than I am. Like there's a poem in the book about Capel Celyn, which people have laughed at that poem, and you think that's not what I was intending at all. You know, damn. All you can do is write what you write, really, I suppose, and you can't. I really don't think you can control comedy, and then if you try and be funny, you're sort of screwed that way as well. So. But yeah, I think approaching these things from every direction, probably the best. Yeah. Is that it?
Is there pressure on you now to do this next collection?
No. I don't think that poetry just doesn't work like that. It's like let's have a Harry Potter follow-up or something. You know, it's just I don't think anyone cares really. You know, which is really nice. Which is really nice because you just feel as though. I mean, with writing the book, like I always felt like I can write a poem today, and if it sucks, then who cares? No one's going to read it, so it's fine. If you can be relaxed like that, then it's fine because you've then got permission to like go down blind alleys and investigate things which might well not work, and that you have freedom to write whatever you want, you know, which is what poetry should be. So no, I think I mean for me, like as a first book writer did, like ridiculously better than I could ever have hoped that it would have done. So for me, I'm like, well, whatever happens next is fine, you know. So yeah.
Do you revise much what you've written? Or do you think poems are best left more or less as they come out?
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier in the workshop, and I mean, for me, I write quite intensely on one thing. So I write in an intense burst, and there might be like 100 handwritten drafts or something in a few hours, you know. And then I'll go back and revise 3 months later. So at that point, I'll type up and I'll try and make some sense of it, and I'll edit it. And I think in that time, you have become an objective reader of that poem. So it becomes as though someone else has written it, and you can kind of see, you know, what works and what doesn't, and what you need to cross out, and quite often what you need to make clearer to the reader as well. Sometimes when you're very close to it, the things that are obvious to you as a writer, you're not necessarily making obvious to the reader. And so I fiddle with it quite a lot at that point. But then we were talking in the workshop that quite often after I fiddled with it for ages, a week later I'll realise that I should have stuck with the first one anyway. You know? So I think that revision is the other thing I do a hell of a lot is just throw things away, just forget them. If they're not working, I just abandon them. And there's an enormous amount of that. I mean, the ratio of things that I throw away to what I keep is just absurd, quite honestly. There's so much of my life I'm wasting on this stuff.
You're obviously quite accommodating as a reader. You don't believe the reader should be left to try and work it out for themselves sometimes. You just say what you want to say it, and if they get it, they do, and if they don't, well, perhaps they will one day, or perhaps they won't. Perhaps even you don't get it.
Yeah, I mean that's really on the kind of side of poetry that I'm on. That I'm very much on the side of kind of accessibility and easy. That I'm really not on the side of difficulty and T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound. You know, I just look like the complete antithesis. And I don't know. Maybe I will get more difficult. I doubt it. I doubt it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it goes back to the sort of poets that I love to read. That I love to read these poets who like the best poetry readings I've been to are the poems, the readings where you get the poem on the first reading, but you also want to go away and read it more yourself. So that's the sort of thing that I aim for. Are we done? Shall I read one more poem to finish?
Yeah.
I'll read one more poem. I'll read a new poem. Well, this is about young people. Given that we're in a university, and given that we were talking about teaching and talking about young people and how they take poems. So this is a poem about young people. Those young people over there. You know, it's that sort of poem. When you start writing poems about young people in the third person, you know, you have problems in your life. So this is called Jen, and thank you so much again for listening. It's been a really lovely evening. And Simon says you can't go until you've drunk all the wine, so it's called Jen. Look at them, coming round the corner, bouncing, flouncing, boho beehives, tattooed, corduroy looned, sneakered scumbags, skinheads, brogue-shod uni-fools. Or look, they're me, they're you, but slightly cooler, lust and roll-up fueled, artfully spectacled idea junkies, pushing, selling. Any one of us could be John Lennon, Jesus. Coke and sneezes force through nostrils that are pinned or pierced. Look, these feather-bowered vegans or these leopard-skinned animals, with their X-rated bodies, their needs never sated by hands-free friends, or look, their palm-held search engines, their razored heads turned by beauty or a global crisis, these masters of their own devices. For every word they've hashtagged or abbreviated, each god they've never worshipped, every song they've downloaded, shook their asses to, or sung. I say, bow down, the young, the young.